The stars had always been beautiful from Earth's orbit. Captain David Cole remembered the first time he saw them as a young cadet, floating in the observation deck of the Academy station. Back then, the universe seemed full of wonder and promise. Now, as he stood on the bridge of Orbital Defense Station Alpha, those same stars were hidden behind 500 alien warships. David gripped the railing in front of him. His knuckles turned white. On the massive view screen, the Vuldrith Armada stretched across space like a wall of death. Each ship was at least 3 times the size of anything humanity had ever built. Their hulls were dark purple, almost black, and covered with strange patterns that glowed with pale blue light. They moved in perfect formation, like a single organism with 500 bodies. "Sir, final count confirmed," said Lieutenant James Park from the sensor station. His voice was steady, but David could see the fear in his eyes. 512 capital ships. Unknown number of smaller support vessels. They are holding position at the edge of the defense grid. David nodded slowly. He had been a soldier for 30 years. He had fought pirates near Mars, rebels on the outer colonies, and even a brief skirmish with the Northern Trading Guild. But this was different. This was extinction. "What do we have?" David asked. 83 ships, sir. 42 destroyers, 31 cruisers, and 10 battleships. The carriers are still in dry dock. David did the math in his head. 6-to-1 odds at best. But the Vuldrith ships were more advanced, more powerful. The real odds were much worse. The communication panel beeped. A face appeared on the secondary screen. Admiral Rebecca Hayes looked tired. Dark circles surrounded her eyes, and her silver hair was pulled back in a messy bun. She was aboard the flagship Victory, leading Earth's defense fleet. "David," she said, "you've seen the numbers." "Yes, Admiral." Rebecca paused. She looked at something off-screen, then back at the camera. "I'm ordering all civilian evacuation shuttles to launch immediately. Get everyone off the orbital stations. And the fleet? We hold the line. We buy time for as many people to escape as possible." She took a deep breath. "I'm not going to lie to you, old friend. We have 6 hours. Maybe less. After that." She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. David straightened his back. "Understood, Admiral. It's been an honor." "The honor was mine." "Haze out." The screen went dark. David turned to face his crew. There were 47 men and women on the station. Most of them were young, barely out of training. They looked at him with wide eyes, waiting for orders, waiting for hope. He gave them what he could. "Listen up," David said. "You all know what's out there. You all know the odds. But we are not going to run. We are not going to hide. We are going to stand here, and we are going to fight. And we are going to show these aliens what humanity is made of." A young officer in the back raised her hand. Lieutenant Emma Shaw, fresh from the academy. She was barely 25 years old. "Sir, what about the colonies? What about our families?" David met her eyes. "The colonies are being evacuated. Your families will be safe. Our job is to make sure they stay that way." The view screen flickered. A new image appeared. It was not human. The Vuldrith Supreme Commander was tall and thin, with pale gray skin that looked like wet stone. His eyes were large and completely black, without pupils or whites. When he spoke, his voice came through the translator as cold and mechanical. "Humans of Earth, I am Supreme Commander Velthos of the Vuldrith Dominion. Your species has been found guilty of territorial encroachment into Dominion space. The penalty is extinction." David stepped forward. "This is Captain David Cole of Earth Defense. We have never entered your space. We don't even know where your borders are." Velthos made a sound that might have been laughter. "Your ignorance is not a defense. Your colony on the world you call New Haven sits on sacred Dominion territory. You were warned. You did not leave. Now you will die. That colony has been there for 100 years. We receive no warning. Then your communication systems are as primitive as your ships. Vel'Thas leaned closer to the camera. His black eyes seemed to swallow the light. You have 1 hour to surrender unconditionally. All humans will submit to processing. Those deemed useful will serve the Dominion. The rest will be eliminated. This is mercy. Rejected, and we will burn your world to ash. The transmission ended. Silence filled the bridge. David could hear his own heartbeat. 1 hour. 1 hour until the end of everything. On the planet below, 7 billion people went about their lives. Children played in parks. Families ate dinner together. Young couples fell in love. None of them knew that death hung above them. Waiting. Emma Shaw moved to stand beside David. Sir, what do we do? David looked at the alien fleet. 500 ships, each one a harbinger of doom. And behind them, Earth, blue and green and white, spinning slowly in the darkness. We do what humans have always done, he said quietly. We survive. Far away, on the colony world of New Haven, an old man named Thomas Wright sat in his small house at the edge of the settlement. He was 73 years old, retired from the Fleet Engineering Corps for 15 years. His hands were wrinkled and spotted with age, but they still remembered how to build, how to fix, how to create. His computer beeped. An emergency message from Earth. Thomas read it with growing horror. The Veldrith. Extinction. 6 hours. But there was something else. Buried in the message was a secondary signal, hidden in the static. A code that Thomas had not seen in 50 years. A code that his grandfather had taught him, back when Thomas was just a boy. The code was simple. Just coordinates. But Thomas knew what lay at those coordinates. Everyone who knew was supposed to be dead. He stood up slowly, his old bones protesting. His hands were shaking now, but not from age. From fear. From hope. They buried you, Thomas whispered to himself. They buried you and tried to forget. But I remember. He grabbed his coat and walked out into the night. Somewhere in the darkness of space, something ancient was waiting. Something terrible. Something human. Thomas had to find it before time ran out. On the bridge of Station Alpha, David Cole watched the clock count down. 59 minutes until humanity's deadline. 59 minutes until war. He did not know that salvation was already on its way. He did not know that an old man on a distant world was about to change everything. He only knew that he would fight and probably die for the world below. But humanity had survived ice ages and plagues and wars. They had climbed out of caves and reached for the stars. They were not going to disappear quietly into the night. The Veldrith wanted extinction. They were about to learn that humanity was very, very hard to kill. Thomas Wright moved faster than a man his age should be able to move. His lungs burned and his knees ached, but he did not slow down. Every second counted. Every heartbeat brought humanity closer to destruction. The spaceport on New Haven was chaos. People ran in every direction, screaming, crying, pushing toward the evacuation shuttles. Security officers tried to keep order, but fear was stronger than discipline. Thomas pushed through the crowd, his eyes fixed on the military hangar at the far end of the port. A young guard stepped in front of him. Sir, you need to go to the civilian area. All military personnel have been called to duty. Thomas pulled out his old identification card. The guard scanned it, and his eyes went wide. Chief Engineer Wright? Sir, you're retired. You shouldn't be here. Son, in about 5 hours, none of us will be anywhere. I need a shuttle. Now. Something in Thomas's voice made the guard step aside. Maybe it was the determination. Maybe it was the fear, Either way, Thomas was running again before the young man could change his mind. The military hangar held 6 small shuttles, all of them old but functional. Thomas climbed into the nearest one and began the startup sequence. His fingers danced across the controls from memory. 50 years had passed, but some things a man never forgot. The shuttle lifted off. Thomas punched in the coordinates from the hidden message and pushed the engines to maximum. The stars blurred around him as the small ship shot into space. The journey took 4 hours. 4 hours of flying through empty darkness, with nothing but the hum of engines and the beating of his own heart. Thomas used the time to think, to remember. His grandfather, William Wright, had been one of the first human astronauts. Back in the early days of space travel, before humanity met other species, before they knew what waited among the stars, William had told young Thomas stories about those times. About the fear, about the hope, about the things humanity had done to survive. And about the ship. The coordinates led Thomas to an asteroid field at the very edge of the solar system. Chunks of rock and ice floated silently in the darkness, some as big as mountains, others as small as houses. Thomas flew carefully between them, following the signal that pulsed stronger with each passing minute. Then he saw it. The asteroid was larger than the others, almost the size of a small moon. Its surface was covered with ice and dust, but Thomas could see something underneath. Something metal. Something artificial. He landed the shuttle on a flat section of rock and put on his spacesuit. The walk to the entrance took 20 minutes. His old legs struggled in the low gravity, and twice he almost fell. But he kept moving. He had to. The entrance was hidden behind a wall of ice. Thomas used the shuttle's emergency laser to cut through it. Behind the ice was a door, massive and ancient, covered with frost. Above the door, barely visible under centuries of dust, were words in English. USS Prometheus and C001. United States Space Force. Thomas felt tears forming in his eyes. It was real. After all these years, it was real. He placed his hand on the control panel beside the door. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, slowly, lights flickered to life along the doorframe. Red, then yellow, then green. The door began to open, creaking and groaning after 250 years of silence. Inside was darkness. Thomas stepped through the door, and lights activated automatically, one section at a time, revealing the interior of the ship. It was smaller than modern vessels, built for function rather than comfort. The walls were bare metal, covered with pipes and cables. The floor was a simple grating. Everything was designed for war. Thomas walked through empty corridors, past sealed doors and silent stations. The ship felt like a tomb, a monument to a time when humanity was young and scared and dangerous. He reached the bridge. It was circular, with a command chair in the center and workstations arranged around the edges. The main view screen was dark, but as Thomas stepped inside, it flickered to life. A voice spoke. Female, calm, mechanical. Identification required. State name and authorization code. Thomas cleared his throat. Thomas Wright. Authorization code. Prometheus Rising 77 Alpha. A long pause. Then the voice spoke again, and this time it sounded almost surprised. Authorization accepted. Welcome aboard. Chief Engineer Wright. I am Mother, the artificial intelligence of the USS Prometheus. It has been 253 years, 7 months, and 14 days since my last activation. Thomas sat down in the command chair. His hands were shaking. Mother, what is this ship? What was it built for? The view screen displayed images. Old footage, grainy and faded with age. Humanity's first contact with alien life. Not the friendly meetings described in history books. Something much darker. The Prometheus was constructed in 2089, Mother said. Following the first contact wars, these wars have been erased from public records, but they occurred between 2081 and 2088. During this period, humanity encountered the Krovax Empire. The Krovax attempted to enslave the human race. They failed. The footage showed battles. Human ships, primitive and small, fighting against alien vessels. Explosions in space. Cities burning on Earth. And then, something else. Human weapons that Thomas did not recognize. Weapons that tore through alien ships like paper. Weapons that made stars weep fire. Humanity won the war, Mother continued, but at great cost. The weapons developed during the conflict were deemed too dangerous for peacetime use. The Prometheus was built to carry these weapons, to be humanity's final defense against extinction. When the war ended and the Krovax surrendered, the ship was hidden. Its existence was classified. Its weapons were sealed. Thomas leaned forward. Those weapons, are they still functional? Affirmative. All systems are operational. The Prometheus has been in standby mode, waiting for activation in case of species-level threat. There's a fleet of 500 alien warships about to destroy Earth. Is that threat enough? Mother processed the information. Affirmative. Species-level threat confirmed. Full combat authorization is now active. Chief Engineer Wright, do you wish to assume command of the USS Prometheus? Thomas thought about his family. His daughter, who lived on Earth with her children. His grandchildren, who had never seen war, who did not know what humanity was capable of. He thought about all the people who would die if he did nothing. Yes, he said. I assume command. The ship came alive around him. Lights blazed to full power. Engines hummed with ancient energy. Weapons systems activated, filling the bridge with the sound of charging capacitors and loading mechanisms. All systems online, Mother reported. Prometheus is ready for combat. Thomas gripped the armrests of the command chair. He was 73 years old. His best days were behind him. But right now, in this moment, he felt young again. Young and angry and ready to fight. Mother, show me the weapons. The view screen displayed a list. Thomas read it slowly, and his blood ran cold. He understood now why humanity had buried this ship. Why they had tried to forget. The Prometheus was not built to win wars, thought it was built to end them, permanently. Mother, Thomas said quietly, set course for Earth. Maximum speed. Understood. Course plotted. Estimated arrival time, 2 hours and 43 minutes. The ancient engines roared. The Prometheus shot out of the asteroid field like a bullet, leaving behind centuries of silence and dust. It was awake now, and it was hungry. Far away, Earth's fleet prepared for their final stand. Admiral Hayes gave orders that she knew would lead her people to death. Captain David Cole watched the Veldrith Armada and counted the minutes until extinction, thought none of them knew that hope was coming. An old man in an ancient ship, carrying weapons that humanity had prayed they would never need again. The Veldrith thought they were facing a young, weak species. They were about to meet humanity's past. And humanity's past was terrifying. The Veldrith bombardment began exactly on schedule. Supreme Commander Velthos watched with cold satisfaction as his fleet opened fire on the human lunar colonies. Brilliant lances of plasma cut through the darkness of space, striking the domed cities on the moon's surface. Explosions bloomed like flowers of death, and Velthos felt something close to pleasure. Humans were weak. Their ships were primitive. Their weapons were laughable. The Dominion had conquered 100 species across the galaxy, and none had been as easy as this. In a few hours, Earth would be nothing but ash and memory. Supreme Commander, one of his officers said, the human fleet is moving into defensive formation around their planet. Velthos made a dismissive gesture with his long gray fingers. Let them. Their fleet is irrelevant. Focus primary weapons on their orbital stations first. Cut off their escape routes. The Veldrith Armada advanced. 500 ships moving as one, their weapons charging for the final assault. Behind them, the ruins of the lunar colonies burned in silence. Admiral Rebecca Hayes stood on the bridge of the Victory, watching her doom approach. Her fleet was arranged in a half-circle around Earth, 83 ships against 500. The math was simple. The outcome was certain, but surrender was not an option. "All ships," Rebecca said into her communicator. "This is Admiral Hayes. In a few minutes, we will engage the enemy. I will not lie to you. Most of us will not survive this day. But every minute we fight is another minute for our families to escape. Every ship we destroy is one less threat to our children. We fight not for victory, but for time. We fight because we are human, and humans do not go quietly into the dark." Hayes out. Across the fleet, men and women prepared for battle. Some prayed. Some cried. Some wrote final messages to loved ones. But all of them stood at their stations, ready to die for their world. On Station Alpha, David Cole coordinated the last evacuation shuttles. Thousands of people had already escaped, heading for the outer colonies or deep space stations. But millions remained on Earth, unable to leave in time. "Sir," Emma Shaw said, "I'm picking up something strange on long-range sensors." David walked to her station. "What is it?" Emma frowned at her screen. "A ship, coming in fast from the outer system. Very fast. But the signature doesn't match anything in our database." "Veldrith reinforcements?" "No, sir. The energy signature is..." She paused, checking her readings twice. "It's human. But the design is ancient. Over 200 years old." Before David could respond, a new voice crackled through the communication system. It was old and tired, but filled with determination. "Earth Defense Fleet, this is Thomas Wright aboard the USS Prometheus. I am transmitting friend codes now. Please do not fire. I am here to help." Rebecca Hayes answered personally. "Prometheus, this is Admiral Hayes. I don't have any ship by that name in my records. Identify yourself immediately. Admiral, with respect, there's no time." The Prometheus is a legacy vessel, hidden since the First Contact Wars. She carries weapons that can turn this battle around. I need you to trust me. Rebecca's voice hardened. First Contact Wars? There were no First Contact Wars. Our history clearly shows that humanity's first alien contact was peaceful. Thomas laughed. It was not a happy sound. That's what they wanted you to believe, Admiral. The truth was buried. But I have proof, and I have weapons. Do you want to argue about history, or do you want to save Earth? On the view screen of Station Alpha, Emma spotted the approaching vessel. It was small, barely a third the size of a modern destroyer. Its hull was angular and aggressive, covered with weapon ports and sensor arrays. It looked like something out of a museum. Or a nightmare. The Prometheus dropped out of hyperspace directly between Earth's fleet and the Veldrith Armada. It hung there in the emptiness, tiny and alone, facing 500 enemies. Supreme Commander Velthos noticed the new arrival. He stared at the small human ship with his black, empty eyes. "What is this?" he demanded. "Scan that vessel." His officers obeyed. After a moment, one of them spoke. "Supreme Commander, the ship appears to be very old. At least 200 years. Its technology is primitive by our standards. It poses no threat." Velthos made the sound that passed for laughter among his species. "A museum piece. The humans are so desperate that they send antiques against us. Destroy it." A single Veldrith cruiser broke formation and fired. A beam of concentrated plasma shot toward the Prometheus, enough energy to vaporize any human ship. The beam struck the Prometheus's shields and vanished. Velthos stopped laughing. What? His officers checked their sensors again, confusion clear on their alien faces. Supreme Commander, the human ship's shields absorbed our attack completely. The energy just disappeared. This should not be possible. Thomas Wright sat in the command chair of the Prometheus, his hands steady on the controls. Mother's voice filled the bridge. Shield integrity at 100%. Enemy weapon had no effect. Shall I return fire? Thomas opened a channel to the Veldrith fleet. He wanted them to hear this. Attention, Veldrith Armada. This is Thomas Wright of the USS Prometheus. I am going to give you one chance to leave this system. One chance to turn around and go home. Take it. Velthos responded immediately. You dare threaten us? You are one small old ship. We are 500. You will be destroyed. Thomas smiled. It was not a kind smile. You think you know humanity, he said. You think we are soft, weak, peaceful, and we are, now. We learned to be. We chose to be. But we were not always this way. He paused. 250 years ago, humanity was different. We were savage. We were brutal. We were fighting for our survival against enemies who wanted to enslave us. And we won. We won because we built weapons so terrible that we sealed them away out of shame. You are looking at those weapons now. Velthos sneered. Ancient history means nothing. Your weapons cannot harm us. Mother, Thomas said quietly, activate Hellfire Protocol. Hellfire Protocol activated. Selecting targets. 40 enemy vessels locked. The Prometheus began to glow. Energy rippled across its hull, strange and beautiful and terrible. Weapon ports opened along its surface, revealing technology that humanity had deliberately forgotten. Fire, Thomas said. The universe screamed. 40 beams of pure destruction lanced out from the Prometheus. They were not plasma. They were not lasers. They were something else entirely, something that modern science could not explain. They struck 40 Veldrith ships simultaneously, and those ships simply ceased to exist. No explosions. No debris. They were there, and then they were not. Silence fell across both fleets. Human and Veldrith alike stared in disbelief at what they had just witnessed. On Station Alpha, Emma Shaw's hands trembled over her console. Sir, she whispered, those ships didn't explode. They were erased. Like they never existed. David Cole could not speak. He could only watch. Velthos screamed into his communicator. All ships, destroy that vessel. Destroy it now. The Veldrith Armada opened fire. Hundreds of weapons blazed toward the Prometheus, enough firepower to crack a planet. The small, ancient ship should have been vaporized 1,000 times over. The Prometheus flew through the barrage like a ghost. Its shields flickered and danced, absorbing attacks that should have been impossible to survive. And as it flew, it fired back. Again and again. Each shot erasing another Veldrith ship from existence. Thomas Wright felt the ship around him shudder and groan. Warnings flashed on his screens. The Prometheus was old, and even its ancient shields had limits. But he did not stop. He could not stop Dodd because behind him was Earth. Behind him were 7 billion souls who did not deserve to die. Behind him was everything humanity had built, everything they had dreamed, everything they could become. The Veldrith wanted extinction. Thomas Wright was going to teach them the meaning of that word. Mother, he said, gripping the controls tighter, increase speed. Target their command ships. Show them what humanity used to be. The Prometheus dove into the heart of the enemy fleet, weapons blazing, shields screaming. And for the first time in 250 years, humanity's past rose from the grave to defend its future. The battle had raged for 3 hours. 3 hours of fire and death and impossible miracles. The Prometheus weaved through the Veldrith Armada like a dancer of destruction, its ancient weapons carving paths of annihilation through the enemy fleet. Thomas Wright had lost count of how many ships he had destroyed. 50, 100, more. The numbers did not matter anymore. Only the fight mattered. Only survival. Warning lights covered the bridge in red. Systems were failing throughout the ship. The shields, so powerful at the start, were now flickering and weak. The weapons were overheating. The hull was cracked in a dozen places. The Prometheus was dying, but it refused to stop fighting.
"Mother," Thomas gasped. "Status report."
Shields at 17%. Hull integrity compromised on decks 3 through 7. Weapon systems operating at 42% efficiency. We have destroyed 153 enemy vessels. 347 remain. Thomas wiped blood from his forehead. A conduit had exploded near his station 20 minutes ago, sending shrapnel across the bridge. He had been lucky. The cup was shallow, but he was tired. So tired. How long until shield failure? At current damage rate, approximately 37 minutes. 37 minutes. Then the Prometheus would be naked against the remaining fleet. Even with its impossible weapons, it could not survive without shields. Far away, Admiral Rebecca Hayes watched the battle from the Victory. Her fleet had joined the fight an hour ago, inspired by the ancient frigate's stand. They were losing ships, but they were fighting. For the first time, they were actually fighting. "Admiral," her tactical officer reported, "the Prometheus is taking heavy damage. It cannot continue much longer." Rebecca nodded grimly. The old ship had performed miracles, but miracles had limits. Without help, Thomas Wright would die, and the tide of battle would turn against them. "All ships," she broadcast, "focus fire on the enemies surrounding the Prometheus. Give that old man room to breathe." Human ships surged forward. Destroyers and cruisers threw themselves at the Veldrith fleet, drawing fire away from the ancient frigate. Many were destroyed, but more kept coming. Humanity was no longer waiting for death. They were fighting back. On Station Alpha, David Cole made a decision. "Lieutenant Shaw," he said, "I need you to do something crazy." Emma looked at him. Her face was covered with dust and sweat, but her eyes were sharp. "Sir, the Prometheus needs repairs. Someone has to get over there with supplies and help that man." David handed her a datapad. "I've loaded the shuttle coordinates and a list of emergency repair equipment. Can you do it?" Emma took the pad. Her hands were steady. "I can do it, sir. You'll be flying through the middle of a battle. The odds of survival are very low." Emma smiled. It was a tired smile, but a real one. "Sir, the odds of survival for all of us were very low this morning. At least now we have a chance." David placed his hand on her shoulder. "Good luck, Lieutenant." Emma ran to the shuttle bay. Within minutes, she was flying through space, dodging debris and weapons fire, heading toward the small ship that was saving humanity. Thomas saw the shuttle approaching on his sensors. For a moment, he thought it was an enemy, and his finger moved toward the weapons control. But Mother spoke first. "Incoming vessel is human. Shuttle from Station Alpha. 1 life sign aboard." Thomas opened a channel. "Shuttle, this is Prometheus. What are you doing here?" Emma's voice came through, young and determined. "Sir, I'm bringing repair supplies." "Permission to dock? Are you insane? There's a battle happening around us." "I noticed, sir." "Permission to dock?" Thomas laughed despite everything. The young woman had courage. He would give her that. "Permission granted. Docking bay is on the port side. Be careful." Emma guided her shuttle through the chaos, weaving between weapon blasts and tumbling debris. The Prometheus's docking bay doors were damaged, barely functional,
but they opened just enough for her to squeeze through. She grabbed a repair kit and ran into the ship.
The interior was worse than she expected. Smoke filled the corridors. Sparks flew from damaged conduits. Bodies of automated repair drones lay scattered everywhere. Overwhelmed by the damage they had tried to fix, Emma found the bridge and stopped in the doorway. Thomas Wright sat in the command chair, blood running down his face, his hands locked on the controls. He looked like a ghost, a very determined ghost. "The repair kit," he said without turning around. "There's a console on the left side. The power coupling is damaged. Fix it." Emma moved immediately. She was not an engineer, but she had basic training. The damage was obvious. A burned coupling, spitting sparks and smoke. She cut away the damaged section and replaced it with components from her kit. The lights on the bridge grew brighter. One of the warning indicators turned from red to yellow. "Good," Thomas said. "Now the shield emitter relay. Behind you." They worked for 15 minutes while the battle raged outside. Thomas fought the ship while Emma repaired it. The Veldrith continued their assault, but the Prometheus refused to die. Finally, Mother announced, shields restored to 41%. Hull breaches sealed on decks 3 and 4. Weapon systems now operating at 67% efficiency. Thomas exhaled slowly. "Thank you, Lieutenant. You may have just saved us all." Emma sat down heavily against the wall. Her hands were burned from the repairs, and her body ached from exhaustion. But she could not rest yet. "Sir," she said, "what is this ship? What are these weapons?" Thomas was silent for a moment. Outside the view screen, another Veldrith vessel vanished in a flash of impossible light. 250 years ago, he said quietly, humanity almost ended. An alien species called the Krovaks came to our world. They wanted slaves. They thought we would be easy. They were wrong. I've never heard of any Krovaks. No, you wouldn't have. After we won, we erased them from history. We erased everything about that war. The weapons we built. The things we did. All of it. Thomas turned to look at her. His eyes were haunted. "We won, Lieutenant. But we were ashamed of how we won. So we buried this ship and tried to become better. Peaceful, kind. The species you grew up in was built on a lie." Emma processed this information. Her entire understanding of human history was crumbling. But somehow, it made sense. The darkness in human nature that everyone felt but no one talked about. The capacity for violence that slept beneath the surface. "The weapons," she said. "What do? They erase matter from existence. Not destroy it. Erase it. Remove it from the universe entirely. Our ancestors called it void technology. They developed it in desperation, and it won us the war. That's terrifying." "Yes, it is. And that's why we buried it." Thomas turned back to the view screen. "But now we need it again. Because sometimes being peaceful is not enough. Sometimes you have to remember how to be a monster." A massive explosion rocked the Prometheus. Mother spoke urgently. "Supreme Commander Velthus's flagship is charging a planetary bombardment weapon. If it fires, Earth will sustain catastrophic damage." Thomas saw the flagship on his screen. It was huge, 3 times larger than any other ship in the fleet. Energy gathered around its main weapon, building toward a strike that could kill billions. "Mother," Thomas said, "do we have anything that can stop that?" "One option remains. Project Genesis. However, activation will require complete power transfer. The Prometheus will be unable to sustain life support afterward." Thomas understood. Project Genesis would destroy the flagship and the remaining fleet. But the Prometheus would die, and anyone aboard would die with it. He looked at Emma, young, brave, with her whole life ahead of her.
"Lieutenant," he said, "get back to your shuttle." "Sir?" "That's an order." "No." Emma stood slowly. She looked at the old man in the command chair, and she understood what he was planning. "Sir, you can't do this alone." Thomas smiled. It was a sad smile, but a peaceful one. "I'm 73 years old, Lieutenant. I've had a good life. You haven't had yours yet. Go home. Tell them what happened here. Make sure humanity never forgets again." Tears ran down Emma's face, but she nodded. "It was an honor, sir. The honor was mine." Emma ran for the shuttle bay. Behind her, Thomas Wright began the activation sequence for Project Genesis. The final act was about to begin. Thomas Wright sat alone on the bridge of the USS Prometheus. The ship groaned around him, wounded and dying, but still fighting. Still holding on for one last act. Mother's voice filled the silence. "Project Genesis is ready for activation. Warning: this weapon will convert dark matter in the surrounding space into pure destructive energy. The resulting explosion will have an effective radius of approximately 50,000 kilometers. No vessel within that radius will survive, including this one." Thomas nodded slowly. Through the view screen, he could see the Veldrith flagship powering its planet-killer weapon. Blue-white energy gathered around its main cannon, building toward the shot that would destroy Earth. Around it, the surviving 347 Veldrith ships held formation, waiting for their victory. They did not know that death was already among them. "Mother," Thomas said, "open a channel to the Veldrith fleet. Let them hear this." Channel open. Thomas leaned forward. His voice was calm, steady, clear. "Supreme Commander Velthos. This is Thomas Wright of the USS Prometheus. I know you can hear me. I know you think you've won. Your flagship is about to fire, and you believe nothing can stop it." He paused. On 100 Veldrith ships, alien officers listened with confusion. Why was this human talking? Why wasn't he running? "You came here thinking humanity was weak," Thomas continued. "Soft, easy prey. And maybe we are, now. We chose to be peaceful. We chose to be kind. We buried our weapons and tried to build a better future." The Prometheus began to glow. Energy rippled across its ancient hull, building and building towards something catastrophic. But we did not forget how to fight. We could not forget. It's in our blood, in our bones, in the very core of what we are. For 250 years, we kept this ship hidden because we were ashamed of what it represented. We were ashamed of ourselves. Velthos stared at the small human vessel on his view screen. Something was wrong. The readings from the human ship were climbing off the scale. His officers scrambled to make sense of the data. "Supreme Commander," one of them said, voice trembling with fear. "The energy signature from that vessel is impossible. It exceeds anything in our records. If it releases that energy, then destroy it." Velthos screamed. "Fire everything, now." Every weapon in the Veldrith fleet turned toward the Prometheus. Plasma beams, missiles, energy lances, all of them shrieked toward the dying frigate. Thomas did not flinch. He kept talking. "Tell your empire what happened here, Velthos. Tell them that humanity was kind enough to forget how to be monsters. But when we needed to remember, we remembered. And your 500 ships were not enough." The weapon struck the Prometheus. Its shields, already weakened, collapsed instantly. The hull began to crack and burn. Fire filled the bridge. Alarms screamed. Thomas smiled through the pain. "Mother, activate Project Genesis." Activation confirmed. "It has been an honor serving with you, Commander Wright." The honor was mine. The USS Prometheus detonated. For one brief moment, a new sun was born in the space around Earth. Light brighter than anything nature had ever created blazed across the void, washing over human ships and Veldrith vessels alike. But this light was not destructive to all equally. It was engineered, designed, hungry for a specific prey, the dark matter. Explosions swept through the Veldrith fleet like a wave of divine judgment. Ships that had survived hours of battle simply came apart, their molecules scattered across dimensions. The flagship, mighty and terrible, was struck at the center of the blast. Velthos had one heartbeat to feel fear before he and his ship ceased to exist. 347 Veldrith. Warships gone, erased, as if they had never been. And in the heart of the explosion, the USS Prometheus burned. Its mission was complete. Its crew of one had given everything. The old ship that humanity had built in desperation, buried in shame and awakened in need, finally found its rest. Emma Shaw watched from her shuttle as the light faded. Tears streamed down her face. She had barely escaped the blast radius. Her shuttle's engines pushed beyond their limits. Now she floated in the darkness, surrounded by debris and silence. The battle was over. Humanity had survived. 1 week later, Emma stood before the United Earth Council in the Great Hall of the Geneva Parliament. The room was filled with representatives from every nation on Earth and every colony in human space. All of them watched as the young lieutenant walked to the podium, carrying a small metal case. "Ladies and gentlemen," Emma said, her voice clear and strong. 1 week ago, 500 Veldrith warships came to destroy our world. They thought we were weak. They thought we would be easy to kill. They were wrong. She opened the case. Inside were several data storage units, old and battered, recovered from the wreckage of the Prometheus. These are the core memories of Mother, the artificial intelligence of the USS Prometheus. They contain records of the First Contact Wars, a conflict that was erased from our history over 200 years ago. They contain the specifications for weapons that our ancestors built and then buried because they were ashamed. The council chamber was silent. Every eye was fixed on Emma. "We won this battle because of one man," she continued. Thomas Wright, a 73-year-old retired engineer who flew an ancient ship into the heart of an enemy fleet and gave his life so that we could live. He asked me to make sure humanity never forgets again. She looked at the faces before her. Politicians, generals, scientists, citizens. All of them survivors of a day they had thought would be their last. "We chose to be peaceful," Emma said. "We chose to be kind. We built schools instead of warships. We sent explorers instead of soldiers. And that was good. That was right. But we also forgot that peace is not weakness. We forgot that kindness does not mean helplessness. We forgot what we are capable of when everything we love is threatened." Admiral Rebecca Hayes rose from her seat. Her uniform was still singed from the battle, and her face was tired. But her voice was strong. "The lieutenant is right," she said. "Thomas Wright saved us all. But he also reminded us of something important. We have the right to be peaceful, but we also have the responsibility to defend that peace. The galaxy now knows what humanity can do. We must make sure they never forget." The council voted unanimously. The records of the First Contact Wars would be declassified. The technology of the Prometheus would be studied carefully, responsibly. Humanity would remain peaceful, but they would never again be unprepared. 1 month after the battle, a message was broadcast from Earth to every corner of the known galaxy. It was simple and clear, transmitted in every language that humanity had learned. To all species of the galactic community. This is Earth. 1 month ago, the Veldrith Dominion sent 500 warships to destroy our world. They failed. We are a peaceful people. We welcome trade, friendship, and cooperation with all who approach us with goodwill. But we are also a people who remember. We remember our past. We remember our strength. We remember what we can become when we must.
Approach us in peace, and you will find partners. Approach us in war, and you will find something else entirely. This is humanity's promise. This is our warning. This is who we are. In the great hall of a dozen alien empires, rulers and commanders listened to the message. Some nodded with respect. Others trembled with fear. All of them understood. Humanity was not to be underestimated. Not ever again. On Earth, life slowly returned to normal. Cities rebuilt. Families reunited. Children played in parks under clear blue skies. Unaware of how close they had come to never seeing those skies again, Emma Shaw was promoted to captain. She was given command of a new ship, the USS Wright, named after the man who had saved them all. Her first assignment was to explore the region of space where the Prometheus had been hidden, to learn what other secrets humanity's past might hold. Before she left, she visited a small memorial that had been built in Geneva. A simple stone pillar with Thomas Wright's name carved into it. Below the name were words that Emma had chosen herself. He remembered so we could live. She placed her hand on the cold stone and closed her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. "I'll make sure they never forget. I promise." Then she turned and walked away toward the future that Thomas Wright had died to give them. Above Earth, the stars shone bright and cold and endless. Somewhere out there, other species were watching, wondering, fearing. The young, soft, peaceful humans had shown their teeth, and the galaxy would never see them the same way again. Humanity was awake now, and they remembered everything.